Hello, you're watching a very special episode on Hornbill TV. Today, Hornbill TV is present with a very special person, a guest, a renowned social activist, an ex-bureaucrat, and also an ex-politician. And we will be speaking to him on issues such as the Naga political talks, the growing number of Naga political groups in Nagaland, and also where these issues, or rather these talks, are leading the state into. So without any delay, we'll go straight, we'll introduce the guest and we'll go straight into the questions. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us your time again. Sir, when we talk about the Naga political issue, this has been a bone of contention for the state government. It has been for the government of India and also the Naga political groups, where everybody, being from the political side of it to the Naga political side of it, are hoping for an early solution. But as things stand clear, it is just the talk of getting an early solution, but on reality, we don't see that happening too much. But another issue that is actually creeping on the public of Nagaland is also the growing number of Naga political groups. To my best of knowledge, the last that I had known, there were 26, but it must have increased to 28. So, sir, you have been following the whole Naga issue from the very start of the whole problem. Back then, there was a handful, and today, even your two hands is not enough to actually count the amount of groups that are actually present. How do you see the situation? Don't you think, with the growing number of these groups, the possibility of getting one solution is practically not possible?
See, it's such an unfortunate picture because during the time when we were still 8, 9 years old, way back in the early mid-50s, if we are to look at the movement that began for Naga sovereignty, it was a time when the total public, the Nagas living in the rural base, looked at our national workers, and that time it was only the NNC that was spearheading the whole perspective, with ultimately the Naga army emerging, then the federal government being instituted. At this given point in time, the respect that the people had for the national workers, who were at that given point in time just purely called undergrounds. You see, there was a tremendous loyalty and a tremendous amount of feelings involved in the hearts of the public to follow the national workers. And so whenever the national workers, or the underground as they were called, come to a village, it is the people who slaughtered animals, fed them, carried their luggage to wherever they needed to go, the coolie, and so on. You know, and they were revered. People respected them. That was the picture of a national worker in that given generation when it all began, when the war started. And so there was a total unison of the national workers and the people working together as a complete, compact, united team. And so necessarily the movement grew in strength to the extent the government of India had no choice but to take necessary precaution by way of introducing the army into the whole fray, and we have had wars at that given point in time, as late as the 60s. And so when this was going on, in times of the real heat of that movement, Nagas were united. Now, the moment Shillong Accord was signed, and unfortunately, Mr. Fizo didn't come out openly to condemn the Shillong Accord, and so they split from NNC, which was a comprehensive compact body, and the federal government. It split into two, and the NSCN emerged. And that time it was only NSCN, nothing, no IM or no K. It was just with Mr. Muiva, Isaac, and Kaplan. Together they formed a new faction saying Shillong Accord is a total surrender. And if we are going to accept that, then there is no business in continuing the movement. But since it is a surrender and we began on a note of sovereignty, therefore we are going to continue the fight. And unfortunately, it is Mr. Fizo, it was his brainchild, and nurtured and groomed and brought up to such a big, significant level until the time when Shillong Accord came, and everything that he built because of his lack of national priorities, not condemning the Shillong Accord, which was in effect a case of surrender, and he could not condemn it. And therefore, when the NNC broke up and the federal government broke up, it split halfway down the middle. And that's when the whole stupidity of factions slowly becoming visible. But even at that time, it was only the federal government, NNC, as one group, and NSCN as the second group. Again, Mr. Kaplan and Isaac Muiva had differences. Again, NSCN, which was known as NSCN, split into NSCN IM, NSCN K. And thereafter, they forgot all thought about population control. One by one, fragmentation and factions started emerging. And it's a sad story because they started killing each other. They did that for what? Not for sovereignty. They were not killing their brothers in Nagaland for sovereignty. Then what were they killing each other for? Taxing turf, you see? And especially a serious place like where the revenue is fertile, those were the areas that had more killings and factional killings, and Dimapur had its share of it, you see. We were happy because FNR had come into the scenario, and they did a very solid work and created an environment whereby all this factional killing that was going on between NSC and IMNK, federal government and NNC, and they were not fighting, as I said, not for sovereignty. Their killing each other was only for carving out tax-free area that they can control. And so when FNR came, FNR did a very good job by asking all the factions to come together in forgiveness as a Christian and at least stop this killing. So FNR was able to bring in all the factions existing at that time to come together face to face and say, okay, from this point on, let us stop killing. Well, that was a very, very positive work done. But what happened after that is, because there was no more killing, everybody was now free to tax anywhere. And so the factions also had their own understanding as to which sector they will be on one day, so they should not come. not to disturb each other, they were able to communicate. And so freely they were taxing the people now. Now that became a problem because in the earlier time they were having a little difficulty to come and tax one area or the other because others were there getting killed because of, so even taxation was not fluently capable to be carried out. But the moment they had understanding between them, the love and forgiveness, the fruit that love and forgiveness bore is that the people were the ones that had to eat the bitter fruit, where taxation came in freely. And one by one, the factions now started increasing. As of today, everybody uses sovereignty as the front face, and behind that front face, the real activity that is going on, and this many factions are coming up. You see, they may give all kinds of glorious sacrifices for the greater good of our nation and so on. But at the end of the day, it just simply boils down to how best and smoothly and conveniently they can tax the people. And so the moment you start a new faction, you become a president and the prime minister. Even if you have two and a half, one will be president, one will be the prime minister, and the other half holds the AK-47, and so it's a faction. And nobody is going to control any other faction because I'm the boss of my own faction, and I decide to tax. Taxing area is free. So when that convenience come up and you see my friend starting a new faction and then all on a sudden he's getting rich, and you get tempted to start another faction. So as long as you can get 2.5, 3 people, it becomes very easy to set up a faction. And so the whole purpose of actually fighting for a purpose, but for all practical purpose, has literally diminished or even disappeared. And today we can talk of sovereignty with big anger, but the fact of reality is there is no way the factions that exist. NSCNIM also talks about sovereignty, but it is also not talking truthfully to the people. So this many factions that are there, as far as I'm concerned, at the end of the day, down to earth, it's seriously being encouraged by creating a faction just so that you can get an independent taxing privileges. And that's the reason why factions are increasing every other day. Multiplication is taking place, and at the end of the day, it's beginning to look like a joke. This Naga sovereignty and the Naga national movement, slowly but surely, is beginning to look like a joke, you see? And I think it's about time that our people wake up to this reality, and also the factions. When I say what I've said, they must not mind, because if they honestly and quietly examine themselves, you see, everything that they are doing is this. And all the negotiation with our historical backgrounds and every evolution of our political movement that has taken place, with all the agreements that have taken place over the Government of India and the negotiating team from the IM or NNPJs, they have gone through all the rights of the Nagas, and then they have come to a certain basic conclusion called the framework agreement on one side. There's the agreed position on the other side. These are the only final work that can only be put on a platform for Nagas to look for solution. Otherwise, the longer this problem is not solved, we are going to have the serious continuity of Today, 26, 7 or 8 factions. Tomorrow, it will be 30, 40. It's going to keep on increasing because everybody who has become a faction, you see, they are getting rich overnight. And they know it. They may deny me and say KK is talking all kinds of nonsense, but the reality will tell its own stories, and the people around them who know them know it clearly. You see? So this mushrooming of faction is a money-driven thing. It is not a political-driven creation. After all, how many kind of sovereignty is Nagaland fighting for? 28 kind of sovereignty?
All right, sir, you just mentioned right now, when the Naga political movement had started, the Nagas were united, and that they were revered. The national workers were revered. Over the past few years, this revere is now being turned into fear, and now people, I think, over the past few years, we have seen how people have come up openly, have held rallies, against illegal extortion, and even to the extent of threatening. And they are all calling for something which, if I'm not mistaken, sir, you had termed this called the one government, one tax. Yeah. So in this whole time that you've been following the issue, don't you think at one point of time there is a saturation point even for the public when it comes to taxation?
I think it's a situation waiting to explode. You see, because the better off Nagas at the upper echelon probably do not feel the pinch of this taxation too much because they are earning more than whatever to be able to pay the taxes without being crippled. But the majority of our population that live in the rural areas, scraping the grounds on a routine seasonal basis, and then earning their little livelihood to stay alive. You see, for them to be paying this many taxes to this many factions, you see, how is it possible? How long can they continue to do this, you see? So when we started off way back in 2013, when we had this account movement, we said, you see, Nagas still feel the value of the beginning that created a philosophy saying Nagas were free and we need to remain free. We should have our own self-determination capable. And so Nagas, majority still have it in their blood, that we were never a conquered people. It's just that circumstances has evolved in a manner in which there are just about that much that Nagas can do because we are fighting a superpower, you see. And that's not a very easy thing, but we have made India sit up and listen. Now, when that's the kind of tempo that we have given, slowly but surely we have started diluting the whole tempo of that original feeling. So the people still have that feeling. And so we said, see, instead of having this many factions, because as I said, we are not looking for 27, 8 different kind of sovereignty. We're looking for one. And to do that, why should there be this many factions for the same purpose, yet you want to do it differently, your own style, you see? That's not a fair deal for the people, especially the common people, who are just unable to continue paying the heavy prices. The other part of the situation is, see, for an honest parent bringing up their children, you see, how much of problem and burdens they bear just so as to give our children education, sacrificing their whole life earning, scraping the ground to get the tuition fees and to keep them alive with some elementary food in the table. You see, for this kind of people, over and above that serious responsibility of having to bear the burdens for the factions, you see, how long, and they have done it, they have been doing it over this last 40, 50 years. How long can they go? And therefore, the philosophy is, since we are not fighting for 28, 30 kinds of sovereignty, and since it is just one sovereignty that we have, I think it's about time. Enough is enough. And therefore, you must all join up together and form one government under one banner for one sovereignty. And the moment you are united, then the people, despite all the burden, would happily at least pay one tax to that one government. Then it'll go back to an honorable status, you see, of due respect being given to them. But today the factions are there, people are not revolting or not coming up because every individual may complain in his own kitchen, but to come out into the open is to face AK-47, you see. Now, I think everybody in their heart don't want to die. I don't think anyone here among us in the world who would say, I want to die. And so the fear psychosis that has really pressed down on the people, they have kept silent for so long, and despite the real excruciating kind of suffering they are going through, they were afraid to say them. But slowly, as of now, people are beginning to get solidly hard-pressed, not being able to bear. And so slowly but surely you see in the given areas here, there, where people have picked up that slogan that we began, one government, one tax, and say, either do that or we refuse to pay tax. So, though a crowd have not been able to sustain this movement, it is slowly being picked up by sector. Say, for instance, Chumukidima areas, they are coming up seriously, openly now. I take my hats off to them because they have picked up the sentiment that had been expressed during the time of a crowd, and they've picked up and they are also basically applying it in their own areas. And it is in small pockets, but if Nagas don't find solution, and if these taxation norms go on, I can more or less predict that a time will come when, whether with guns or not, people will openly form their own strength and momentum and tell them to get lost, not to come around for any more taxation. We don't believe in their so-called national movement, because national movement is in some dark corner somewhere. It is the taxation that's taking the limelight, you see. And when this is the situation, the people at one time or another are bound to come up. There'll be a serious civil upheaval for sure if this continues for any further period of time. And therefore, solution is something that is critically important, and that all factions must realize that this game they are playing cannot be sustained. And there must come a time when all of them put their heads together and come to a conclusion and consider the agreements that has already been conducted by the people at the negotiating table. And whether it is the framework agreement or the agreed position, which are the two final agreements that has been entered into with the government, the contents are more or less the same. In as far as the competency clauses are concerned, what is in agreed position and what is in a framework agreement, the competency clauses are more or less the same, as if it's been picked up from one from the other. A few little awkward clauses are also there, which I don't need to go into, but it's about time. Since these are agreement that has already been finalized, I think it's about time that the government of India, working with all the factions, call for one formal sitting whereby these two agreements under different names called framework and the agreed position are properly structured and put together, creating the final document that all of them should be able to comfortably sign. You see, and that's what we are trying to project towards trying to achieve, to help the factions to see some light in the rationality that we cannot continue playing with the system. And then the more we continue in this fashion, we are only diluting and demeaning our honorable picture that began as a movement of the Nagas when it began. It's about time that they also realize.
All right, so this whole Naga political movements, even if you look at the various sections of society, there are still a huge number of people that still truly, devotionally support this whole Naga political movement. But there is another thing happening side by side, and which is the present Naga generation or the youths of Nagaland. So would you believe that even say Pizzo or Isaac or Mr. Muiva, do you think that they want to give an impression of the movement to the youngsters? Because if today you ask anything to a youngster about the undergrounds, there's hardly anything positive that they have to say. And and like you said, the movement was revered, it was supported, and Nagas were united. But the coming generation, the youth, are not seeing this issue in the same light. Would you blame them? And do you think that is the way our Naga youth should remember the Naga political movement?
No, it will be a sad thing for our younger generation to remember only what they see now. Because when I look at everything that has happened in the past, and my generation is perhaps the last generation that has actually seen the serious suffering that our people have gone through. We have watched as children villages burning, the army burning up the villages, smoke, pillars of smoke coming out, and as children we have watched in awe, and then the concentration camps, grouping as they used to call. We were put through such a lot of hardships. And so those are things that for our generation, no matter what we may say about sovereignty or even a solution, those are pictures that are, engraved into our soul, you see. And so the business of actually having that desperate desire for freedom, we have felt the pride of it. But today's youngsters haven't seen exactly what their parents have gone through. And so when they are just born yesterday, and then the only thing they see is something called the national workers coming with AK-47 and saying, if you have a pocket money, you have $5, then at least give me 3 rupees from your $5. See? They take more. See? When you open a small, as a youngster, father gives him 5,000 rupees to start a small pawn gumti, and the next day the national workers come with their national taxation. Okay, you're starting a pawn shop, very good, son. Now you pay 10,000 rupees for your shop tax. He has not even begun. And the taxation comes. You see, while it may sound like a joke, there have been 1,001 youngsters who have actually started business and just couldn't continue, because a real business is you invest 1 rupee, work the hell out of yourself for months on end, years on end. So what you invested as 5,000 rupees, maybe at the end of the year, you may make another 1,000 rupees, you see. That's the slow, progressive situation of a business that has to be nurtured. But when business itself is so difficult to nurture, comes the taxation that destroys you immediately. So how many of our younger generation who couldn't get employment starting an entrepreneurial effort, getting blown away because of taxation, how many of our younger generation are they going to blow out of the system? You see, they are destroying generations. And these are all possible because of that so-called sovereignty. And there is no sign of it in reality, and so the younger generation can never find the pride. While they may feel that we are Nagas, we don't look Indian, we are this or that, and that sentimentally the feeling of being a little bit of a different race compared to the mainland people may exist. But the reality of ourselves as different people needing a different identity of our own and free, you see. These are feelings that are now slowly being diluted because the young generations are getting bigger opportunities of seeing the world, at least, go forward. With all the networking, we can see the world around us sitting in our small little corner, watching how people are growing, you see. And we can too. Even our younger generation, they realize even they can be as good as the people elsewhere around the world. But that it's not possible because there is no proper infrastructure, there is no proper development, the environment is saturated by corruption, and they see only the rottenness in the government system, rottenness in the so-called national movement workers, and the taxation. So the younger generation definitely will not have the same kind of reverence or respect for the so-called national workers, you see. And I don't blame them. But at the end of the day, I guess we may have to call upon the younger generations to begin to understand the reality and just not complain in their own little corners, but they may have to come together without fear and with courage, stand up for something that they foresee and what vision they may like to create for themselves in the future. Those are issues that the young generation must address and begin to work towards it, and have to, if required, to stand against the so-called national workers. Then it's about time they did, because as I said, slowly but surely, the people are slowly beginning to get weary of all the kind of corruptive taxation that's going on unreasonably. Our living cost has gone up double, triple, without any control. And so this is a situation that cannot be sustained. At the end of the day, a day will come when factions just might run into the danger of a civil population's explosion against them. You see, it is a possibility. And I hope our faction people understand that it's a lurking danger even for them. They cannot threaten the people all their lives. There will be repercussions.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving us your precious time and also enlightening and sharing your wisdom. We hope that through this, the message is clear that no matter what, in the end, the movement started with unity, and it might have lost its way for a while, but sir hopes that the unity will come back to the people and that we can all move forward to an honorable, but one honorable solution. Hornbill TV will be bring you more stories like this, so keep watching Hornbill TV. Goodbye.